My name's James, and this isn't your typical campfire story. This is about something that happened to me, something that burrowed into my mind and refuses to let go. It all started with a stupid dare in a dusty attic. Buckle up, because this is the story of how a single night turned my world upside down. The air in the attic was thick with the smell of forgotten things, mothballs, dust, and a faint undercurrent of something sharp and metallic. The single bare bulb hanging from the exposed rafters cast an anemic glow, barely penetrating the mountains of old furniture and forgotten toys that filled the space. It wasn't supposed to be haunted. That's what everyone kept saying. My parents, my aunt, the realtor who practically begged us to take the house off their hands. Just a bit of settling, they'd all said. Old houses creak. Except this wasn't creaking. This wasn't settling. This was a rhythmic thump, like a slow, muffled heartbeat coming from behind the boarded-up window at the far end of the attic. I shouldn't have climbed up here. It was a dare fueled by that strange mix of bravado and morbid curiosity that teenagers seem to possess in equal measure. My friends, already halfway down the creaky attic stairs, were calling for me to hurry.
Just checking it out,
I yelled back, my voice echoing unnaturally in the vast space. The thump came again, a little louder this time. My heart hammered a frantic tattoo against my ribs. It wasn't a regular sound, a loose brick or a shifting beam. This felt deliberate, intentional. I crept closer to the boarded-up window, the rough wood splintering against my fingertips. The moonlight cast long, skeletal shadows across the dusty floorboards. The thump came again, this time accompanied by a faint scratching sound. It was coming from inside the wall, directly behind the boards. Panic clawed at my throat. I didn't even dare to breathe, afraid the sound would draw whatever was on the other side closer. Then, a new sound. A whisper, barely audible but undeniably there. It was a voice, raspy and low, speaking words I couldn't understand. I stumbled back, knocking over a dusty rocking horse. The clatter echoed through the attic, shattering the tense silence. The scratching sound from the wall intensified, turning frantic. I didn't wait to see what else happened. I turned and fled, legs burning, lungs screaming for air. Reaching the attic door, I slammed it shut behind me, ignoring the splintering wood as the doorknob twisted uselessly in my hand.
Hey, what's wrong?
My friend Ben yelled, catching me as I stumbled out onto the landing.
the window. It's...
The words wouldn't come. I just pointed back at the attic door, the muffled sounds of frantic scratching still audible behind it. My friends exchanged a nervous glance. They weren't as quick to dismiss the sounds as creaking floorboards anymore. We scrambled down the stairs, the silence of the house suddenly deafening after the noises from the attic. We never went back up there. The attic became a forbidden zone. The boarded-up window, a constant reminder of the chilling encounter. The thumping continued for a few nights, growing fainter each time, until it finally stopped altogether. But the house felt different after that. There was a heaviness to the air, a sense of something unseen watching us. Doors would creak open in the dead of night. Objects would move inexplicably. My parents, initially skeptical, grew pale and withdrawn. One morning, I found my mother staring at the attic door, tears streaming down her face. She wouldn't tell me what she saw, wouldn't even acknowledge the question. We moved out a few months later, Officially, it was for better opportunities. But we all knew the truth. The house had won. Years later, I drove past the old place. It looked exactly the same, a monument to decay on a quiet suburban street. I felt a pang of something akin to pity, a flicker of understanding. Whatever was trapped in the attic, it was a prisoner too. But then, as I pulled away, I saw it. A single flickering light in the attic window, the only light in the whole house. And for a fleeting moment, I could almost swear I heard a faint, rhythmic thump. I've always been a night owl, finding solace in the silence that descends with the setting sun. The world changes at night. It becomes mysterious, taking on an eerie beauty that many fail to appreciate. But one particular night, that enchanting world of darkness turned into a chilling nightmare, one that would haunt me for the rest of my life. I lived alone in a small, cozy cottage, nestled deep in the woods. It was a haven away from the chaos of the city, a place where I could embrace the solitude that I cherished so much. But as the nights grew longer and the wind carried a sharper chill, my sanctuary began to change. It all started with the first call. One night, as I sat reading a book in the dim light of my living room, the phone rang. I picked it up, surprised that someone would be calling so late. The voice on the other end was a soft, whispering murmur, barely audible. It spoke in riddles, cryptic words that made no sense. I assumed it was a wrong number or some kids playing a prank, so I hung up and thought nothing more of it. However, the calls didn't stop. Each night, the same eerie voice would call, always after midnight. The words grew more sinister and strange. The voice spoke of things that were impossible to understand, of ancient secrets and impending doom. I became increasingly unnerved by these calls and considered changing my number, but a sense of curiosity prevented me from doing so. Who was this mysterious caller, and what did they want from me? As the nights passed, I began to lose sleep. The voice invaded my dreams, filling them with bizarre and terrifying visions. Shadows danced at the edge of my vision, and I heard whispered secrets that I couldn't comprehend. The lines between reality and nightmares blurred, and I found myself in a constant state of fear and exhaustion. One evening, after a particularly unsettling call, I decided to confide in my friend Sarah. She was worried about my deteriorating mental state and insisted on staying with me for a few nights to keep me company. I welcomed the company, hoping that her presence would chase away the relentless darkness that had engulfed my life. The first night, Sarah stayed. All was quiet. We talked, played cards, and tried to regain some semblance of normalcy. It felt like the nightmare might finally be over. But as the clock struck midnight, the phone rang once more. Sarah's face turned pale as she heard the haunting whisper on the other end. She urged me to call the police, but I couldn't. I couldn't explain why. It was as if an invisible force held me back. The next night, Sarah insisted on answering the call herself. She was determined to confront the mysterious caller and put an end to this torment. As the clock struck midnight, the phone rang again, and Sarah picked it up with a determined look in her eyes. But her expression quickly turned to one of pure horror. She dropped the phone, trembling, and whispered that the voice had spoken my name, saying it in a way that sent chills down her spine. Desperation set in. I felt like I was being drawn into a sinister web with no way out. I couldn't escape the voice, and it knew my name. Sarah decided to stay another night to support me. but she was clearly unnerved by the situation. That night, as we lay in the dimly lit living room, the clock struck midnight once more. This time, the call didn't come through the phone. Instead, it seemed to emanate from the very walls of the cottage. The voice echoed around us, surrounding us with its eerie whispers. It spoke of my deepest fears and darkest secrets, things I had never shared with anyone. It was as though the voice knew everything about me. Terrified, Sarah insisted that we leave the cottage immediately, but I was paralyzed by fear. It was as if the cottage itself held me captive, preventing me from escaping the nightmare that had become my life. The voice grew louder and more aggressive, filling the room with a malevolent energy. I could feel it closing in on us, suffocating us with its presence. Sarah, on the other hand, was determined to break free. She grabbed my hand and pulled me towards the door, but as we reached it, the cottage seemed to come alive, its walls shifting and contorting, blocking our path. The voice, now a cacophony of torment, grew even more intense, and I could feel it seeping into my mind, pushing me to the brink of insanity. In a final, desperate attempt, Sarah smashed a window and pulled me through. We stumbled into the cold, unforgiving night, leaving the cottage and the voice behind. The calls ceased and the nightmares receded, but the scars of that dreadful experience remained etched in my soul. To this day, I live with the knowledge that the voice could return at any moment, that the nightmare could come crashing back into my life. I no longer find solace in the darkness of night. Instead, I fear it. The memory of the midnight caller haunts me, a constant reminder of the terrifying reality that I once faced and the horrifying unknown that still lingers in the shadows.